From high above the city of Reno, overlooking downtown, it is vlog number 5. Thanks for joining me. After, as you saw at the end of last week's, I took the poker version of a punch directly in the face. It was kind of the hand heard round the world of Reno poker when I had Ace King of Hearts, that is, on a board of Ace Jack 9 with 2 hearts, a $150 pot, and my opponent bets $2,540 into that pot, for which I have him covered, something that's not always the case. I end up making the call and going brick to go from a $700 win to a $1,700 loss, roughly, in one hand. A lot of thoughts on this, certainly. The first thing that I want to again emphasize about it is this is very player dependent. I'm not going to tell you too much about this particular opponent other than the fact that he does not have to have me beat here too often. He's a guy who's pretty much known as a maniac, one of the guys who drives the game with action, so given the fact it was him, definitely led me towards a call. Obviously, I was a favorite, only by 3%, but had he showed me his hand, would I have called? That's kind of the question that you could ask here. Knowing that I would be that small favorite, would I want to risk it? And in all honesty, I would have said no. If he had showed me that he had me beat there, I probably would not have called, given the fact I had so little invested and there was so much money to lose. But I could certainly make the argument the other way as well. So comments are continuing to come in on that, and we will probably get to some of those later on in this vlog. But that said, don't want to waste any more time. Want to get in to some more cash game action this week. I've got a story. Week after the carnage that was that Ace King hand from a week ago, that $5,000 pot, I can't guarantee things are going to go a lot better today. Not going to guarantee a win, but I can guarantee they're not going to go worse. Out here in the car, taking a quick break to run down a few hands so far in this session. 3-5 no limit hold'em, buying in for $1,000 here at the Pepper Mill on a Saturday morning. First hand, I opened pocket 9s under the gun. The game's actually short-handed at this point. It's 6-handed. I get 3 callers, including 2 players in late position and 1 blind. Flop ends up coming out King Jack 9 with 2 clubs. The blind checks, and to me this seems like a pretty good spot to make a decent sized bet. If anyone has a king, they're not going to throw it away immediately, and there are plenty of draws that can continue on as well. So it's a question of sizing in this spot. If people are with hands like deuces, 3s, 4s, I know I'm not going to get any action anyway. So I go ahead and bet actually even smaller than I think I can a lot of the time here. I bet 50 into a pot of 80. And the player on my immediate left thinks about it for a minute and folds, and then to my disappointment, both the other 2 players fold instantly. So tells me that no one had a king and no one had a flush draw. Probably nobody had a decent straight draw either. The player to my left ultimately said afterwards that he had a jack and a gut shot. but did not want to give me action with it. So looked like a great spot, but ultimately just a small pot to start things off. The next hand is actually a blind versus blind hand. It folds around to the small blind. I'm in the big blind, and he goes ahead and makes it 20. So I look down at 8-9 of diamonds, and I figure it's a decent spot to play a hand in position. So I call the extra 15, and I get a really interesting flop. It comes ace, jack, 10 with 2 diamonds. So I flop the open-ended straight draw and a flush draw. So I immediately start thinking about, should I raise a continuation bet here or just call? Instead, I don't get one. He checks it over to me. So kind of surprising to see that. I would figure this would be a perfect board for a pre-flop raiser to continue to bet, whether he has something or not. So he checks it to me, and I decide to go ahead and make a semi-bluff here. I bet 25. I toss in the green chip, and he doesn't take much time with it at all, and he tosses in one right after me. So he goes with the check call line. The turn comes a complete brick, so nothing comes in, and I'm still now sitting here with 9 high, but still quite a few outs against basically any hand that he could have here. He checks again, and now it brings up the question, do I continue to semi-bluff, or do I take a free river card? I opt for the former. I choose a sizing of 65. And I'm hoping that he will get away from a lot of hands he could have here. Instead, he check raises me. So now the warning bells start to go off in my head. This is an opponent that I know very well, a pro, about my age, and definitely is not going to be in here messing around with me with too many hands, not too often. He check raises me to 150, so there's no way that he can expect me to have as much equity as I have against him, even if he does have a monster hand on this flop, which I'm now pretty convinced that he does. So $85 more to call. I decide to go ahead and make that call and hope that, especially given the fact that I'm in position, I can get a decent river card to value bet on if it does come in. Instead, I miss everything. The river comes an offsuit ace, and he goes ahead and bets pretty big, I believe about 225, but given the fact I'm sitting here with 9 high, and I know he has a monster, obviously there's no decision to be made. The point being, though, my initial read did end up being correct because he had to show the hand. Here at the Pepper Mill, they give bonus hands for quads or better using both hole cards, a pocket pair of both hole cards, and straight flushes. So in this case, he says, I have a bonus hand, and he shows pocket aces for a flopped set and then rivered quads. So definitely I could have been paid off if I hit one of my outs there. Could have lost a lot should I have hit a diamond and the board paired, but it turns out I just ended up losing the bets before that. So in this next hand, I'm in the cutoff. A player to my right in the hijack goes ahead and limps in. So I decide simply to overlimp when I look down at pocket deuces. The button on my left limps in as well. But the small blind, who is a player that I know very well, plays very tight, and is very tough to get action from, he raises a 35. The hijack calls, and he's the guy that I think I have a decent chance of getting a lot of action from the majority of the time in this game anyway. So he calls to 35, and I go ahead and look to set mine. I call the 35 as well, and so does the button. So we see this flop 4 ways with about $140 in the pot. The flop comes quite favorable. Ace, queen, deuce, rainbow. There's really no draws to speak of. There's no possible open-ended straight draws. There's no flush draws. My concern is the small blind, who would raise pre-flop. Either A, I'm not going to get any action from him because he has pocket kings here, pocket jacks, or something like that that's not going to give me any action, or B, he has a bigger set. This is one of those guys who I've just played so many hands with, I know that's the scenario. So that's what I'm actually thinking about here. He makes a very small flop bet. He bets 40. So 40 into 140. The hijack on my right calls. And again, I'm seeing no draws in this hand. I'm still worried that I could be beat a small percentage of the time by the small blind. And I assume that I have everyone else dominated here, so I just call.
looking to build this pot up. The button calls as well, and the turn comes a 10. Does bring in a backdoor flush draw, and now the small blind checks. So now we can rule out the possibility of him having a set here. There's no way he's the kind of player that would all of a sudden play a set of aces or a set of queens this way, so I can rule that out. He could possibly still have ace-king, but I don't think he's going to have that too often either, taking that line. So he checks, the hijack checks, and I go ahead and bet 85. Then the hand gets really interesting when the button makes a raise. He does not take too long with it. He makes it 200. This becomes, I think, a pretty clear-cut shove here. He does not have much behind, is the reason why I say that. He only has about 200 behind. In fact, I think he actually has less than 200 behind. So I'm sitting here with the set. I gotta tell you, this is one of those spots where my instincts were telling me I was beat. That would only come in the form of him having a bigger set on the flop for the turn, or having turned a gut shot straight. But I really had the instinct that I was beat. The thing was, it's not a player that I knew. A guy about my age, I had never played with him before. So if this were a guy like the small blind, and this raiser in this hand, who I've been talking about, who I know so well, I could get away from this hand. But I just don't think that I can get away from it, given the fact that it's a guy who I've never played with, and the fact the stacks are as short as they are. But I just had a feeling I was beat. So I shove all in, he snap calls, and he has King Jack for the turned nut straight. I need a board pair on the river, which, as any of you who have played poker know, it's very tough to get a board pair when you need it. It doesn't come, and he doubles up. This next hand, it folds around to me in the cutoff with pocket kings. Not too many appearances so far on this blog with big starting hands for me, but this is one of them. I get kings, and I make it 15. The button immediately raises me to 50. And this is generally a spot where I'm not a huge fan of re-raising, because I'm going to blow him off so many hands that I could get action from. So I go ahead and just call, and that's part of due to the fact that I know this player too, and I don't think he's going to give me action with too many hands, is the reason why I say that. The flop does not come very good for me, though. It comes ace, 10, deuce with 2 hearts. I check, the button bets 60. I decide to peel here. Definitely a spot where I probably shouldn't be doing that, I acknowledge. I call the 60, and the turn comes what seems to be a blank, but I'm still not sure where I'm at in the hand. It comes a 7. I check, he bets 110, and at that point I was just done with the hand. I lay it down, and I don't get a look at what he had. So losing with kings in that spot. Interesting hand here, when I open 10-9 of clubs, and I get a call from a pro, or at least a guy I think is a pro, in middle position. I've never seen the guy do anything else. I can't really figure him out. He's one of those guys that you don't really know. You know, there's most people that you play poker with, you kind of know their deal, if they're a pro, if they have a job or whatever. This guy, I don't know what the hell his deal is. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't want to harp on it, but it's still something that people who play in Reno know as well. It's just, this guy is just bizarre. But anyway, I go ahead and open the 10-9 of clubs, and he calls in middle position. The button also calls, and the flop comes King, Jack, 6, rainbow with 1 club. Not a great flop for me. I check, and it does end up getting checked around. The turn comes the 10 of diamonds, so now I make a pair. I bet 20, and this player that I'm talking about, who's an MP1, raises me to 60. Everyone else folds, and I really don't think this guy has to have me too often. I know the way he plays. I know he's capable of bluffing a lot. He's shown me in the past he will bluff me a lot. And I think if he had me beat, he would have bet on the flop. But I can see why he'd think that I don't have anything. So I call. The river comes the 4 of hearts, and I check, expecting him to bet a lot of the time here, but he checks it back. And at that point, I basically know that I'm good. I flip over the hand, and he gives me some kind of condescending speech telling me what an idiot I am for calling him in that spot, how I'm never going to be good, but I was. So I win that one in a pretty decent spot.
Once again.
right, it's about 8:30, so we're looking at about a 9.5-hour session. Bought in for $2,000, cashed out for a little under $3,200 for about an $1,100 win. I will certainly take it after that bloodbath a week ago.
Once again.
Here in downtown Reno this morning, covering an armed robbery on the morning show.
2 men in jail after robbing a downtown store.
KOL 8 News Now's Ben Deach is live at the Walgreens on North Virginia Street with what we know so far. Good morning, Ben.
Just a couple of hours ago, 2 men walked in and tried to rob the store. It's actually kind of funny how this thing played out. We had 2 guys walk into the Walgreens just down North Virginia Street here. That happened at about 1:30 a.m. They walked in there with a gun, they pointed the gun at the clerk, they got away with an undisclosed amount of money. They were run down by police only a block or 2 away on foot. Okay? This reminds me of the line in the movie The Hangover when they're talking about the roofies and how the guy Doug, the wrong Doug, didn't even know what they were when he was supposed to be this drug dealer.
Roofly. What the hell is a roofly? Wow, you are the world's shittiest drug dealer.
I think the same thing here. These have got to be the worst robbers of all time. You don't even have one guy waiting in the getaway car and or anything like that. You just walk in there and then you get run down by police on foot a couple of blocks away. Man, these tool bags have got absolutely no clue. Anyway, that brought me to downtown Reno for the morning show, but what I want to talk about here is I want to get you involved, really. You, the viewers to this vlog. Those of you that know that I did a radio show for about a decade here in Reno, talking about sports every day, then you know that one of my big things was to always get the listeners involved. And that's really what made that show great, was taking calls and reading tweets and emails from listeners. And I want to do the same thing here in this vlog. So tons of comments coming in, and I really do appreciate everyone taking the time to do that at the bottom of these vlogs. And really, the majority of them coming from the last vlog were due to this hand I lost with Ace King of Hearts. After I raised it to 75 pre-flop, got a call, and the flop came out Ace Jack 9 with 2 hearts. With $150 in the pot, my opponent proceeded to bet $2,540. And I called him. I had him covered, and I went brick to lose a pot of over $5,000. So that one hurt, but a lot of comments coming in on this. So let's see what some of you had to say about this hand. First of all, Josh from Canada writes in, on the flop, it's a call all in. But assuming the play was a little more standard on the flop, some variation of a check, bet 125, call 125, and the turn is a brick, then an all-in for 2.3K is likely not a call. Josh, I completely agree with you. If I'd known I only had 1 card to come, I definitely would not have called him. But 2 cards to come, and knowing, and this is the important part, knowing this opponent, playing with him for over 6 years now, I know this is never a set. So factoring that in, I figure I had to call. It turns out I was a slight favorite in the hand, which gets me to the next comment. Kyle writes in, he didn't have you equity-wise, you were 53-47. I then confirmed that math. Tough spot though, liking the vlogs, keep it up. Sean writes in, no one's ever folding Ace-King. Then Sean writes in, no one is ever folding Ace-King. He can have Queen-10 of hearts. You're just at the top of your range to not call. Whoever says they're folding are going to be results-oriented or bluffing. Another comment here, no name, he just says, rhymes with carbon. He says, I don't play at these limits, but without aces, I'm getting out of the way. You want my 75 bucks that bad, pal, and you shove 2,500 for it? Have it. I do this all the time and feel like I'm losing the minimum when shoved on, and I'm unconfident, but winning more often when I control the bets. Great content, subscribed. That's definitely a very fair way to look at it, and I would not blame anyone for looking at it that way, saying, hey, I got $75 invested. For me, that's just not the way I play, particularly against this type of opponent, and that's the main reason why I called him, given who it was, given the fact I know how he plays, and he just loves to shove. Vladimir writes in, can't fold ace-king of hearts with so much equity against his range. He is a sick man. Stack him later. He's definitely a sick man, Vladimir. You got that one right. A couple different comments on a couple different notes here. Larry writes in, Ben, great vlog, great music. Why won't you play 1-2? I said that on the last vlog. Yeah, Larry, I do not play 1-2 anymore for several reasons. The first of which is the rake. They're taking the same rake, sometimes more, in 1-2 games than they are in the 3-5 game here in Reno, which is a 5% rake with a $4 maximum rake and $1 for the bad beat jackpot. 1-2, it's basically the same thing, even though it's 10% rake there a lot of the time, so that can add up too, even though it's also a 4 max. So you're paying more in rake, you're giving the house more to play the game, but every pot you win is going to be less. Now the argument to play 1-2 would be the players are much weaker, which they often are, but that's not going to get me to play. It's just so hard to win as much money in that game because people are only playing so short stacks. The 3-5 game here in Reno is an uncapped buy-in. I know that's rare, but that's the cool thing about it. Whereas 1-2, it's $300 max buy-in. So those reasons, and just the time factor involved, I'd rather just kind of wait it out until a seat opens in 3-5 as opposed to playing 1-2. And then finally, we get back to this topic. Some of you who have watched these vlogs know that I have a cat named Oliver. He just kind of accidentally walked into one of my vlogs when I was talking about hand histories. I wasn't actually going to get him on there, but he made an appearance on his own, and that got more reaction than I was expecting, thanks to a fellow vlogger, Brad Owen, whose cat has been kind of the star of his vlog in the past, but doesn't appear that he will be anymore due to a development in his personal life, which is why Tom K writes in, Cosmo is now retired and gone from vlog life. It's time for your cat to step up and fill those very big shoes, my friend. Listen, Tom, that would be like filling Shaq's very big shoes, size 22. Those are huge shoes, Tom. I don't know if Oliver can handle it because Cosmo was crushing on that vlog, rapping. I'm not sure Oliver can do it, but you never know. We'll get back to that at a later date. Before we get to anything else, me and two buddies had a chance to make the short drive, about a 3.5-hour trip down I-80 to San Francisco to check out some Giants baseball. Me and one of my buddies, big Giants fans, me and the other one rather, is a Mariners fan. So the Giants played the Mariners, and we had a chance to head on down to check out that game at AT&T Park. Let's go there now. AT&T Park. Dale, my buddies Chris Ciarlo, my old co-host from the radio show, and Dale Clifford. We go back to college 14 years ago or so in journalism school here, AT&T Park. Chris, big Mariner fan. Me and Dale, both big Giants fans. And we are here to hopefully see a Giants win after a disappointing loss yesterday, in which the Giants offense continued to not show up. So we're checking that out now.
I think there's a really good chance that it's a 0-0 game going into the ninth, and the first team to make a mistake wins.
In all honesty, I would sign up for that at this point to give us that much hope if we could get that in this game. Well, this game ended up being a beatdown. Giants not quite looking like their 2014 form, but scored a lot of runs today. 10-1 the score over Seattle.